That's all right if they get wet.
Grandma's gonna want to see. Grandma, look what we found.
Oh my, oh gosh, isn't that wonderful? Oh, that brings back memories. Let me tell you a story.
It was not my idea to farm the city.
Okay, Scotty, let's start at the beginning. For thousands of years, a tribe of Indians known by the name of the Eyes lived on this barrier island. However, they only lived here during the wintertime because the mosquitoes, the Florida state bird, were so biting and vicious during the summer.
Now, Patrick, John, that's your Irish humor. You know that the Florida state bird is the mockingbird.
In 1513, only 21 years after Columbus sailed west from Spain, the Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon sailed past our coast and moved on in his epic voyage of discovery. The Indians and mosquitoes were sufficiently fierce that he and those who followed did not even attempt to settle this area. In this 1825 map, made before Florida was a state, the eastern portion of Florida was called Mosquito County. The county was still a primitive area with very few inhabitants.
Grandma, when did people start coming here?
Oh, I believe it was back in the 1800s, Emily.
Our barrier island remained almost entirely uninhabited until after the Civil War. Soon after the war ended, a few hardy souls from other parts of the country began to move into the Indian River region. Here are some facts about how this area grew. Cocoa was first settled by fishermen in the 1860s. Then, Confederate Colonel Henry Titus founded Titusville in 1867. Melbourne grew from a settlement established by 3 freed slaves about 1870. Melbourne Beach was founded by a retired Union general in 1883. Rockledge was the first community in Brevard to be incorporated in 1887. The first purchase of public land in our vicinity was by William Henry Gleason, a resident of Wisconsin. He visited this part of Florida in 1865 when he was commissioned by the U.S. government to determine if Florida could serve as a colony for freed slaves. He was so impressed with the area that he purchased 25 square miles, including some on this barrier island, from the state of Florida in 1871 for $1.25 per acre. He then moved his family to his new holdings and established the town of O'Galley. The next purchase of land in this area did not occur until 20 years later. Austin Lyman, a dentist, moved his family from Ohio to Melbourne in the 1880s and purchased from the government 158 acres around what is now Elwood and Roosevelt Avenues, again for $1.25 per acre. Mr. Lyman's purchase began a flurry of land buying. Buyers included a company chartered by the state to build canals to improve transportation and a couple of companies formed by railroad magnate Henry Flagler. The first indication that someone actually resided in this area is evident with a homestead deed signed by President McKinley during September 1898. That deed granted John Lyman, the son of Austin, 163 acres spanning roughly from Lake Shepherd in the Sea Park area to the ocean. Others, including John's brother Lewis, also obtained homestead deeds to tracts of land in the area. The present form of Satellite Beach started to take shape in the 1920s. In 1921, the first subdivision in this area was registered with Brevard County. That subdivision was O'Galley by the Sea, forming the southeastern corner of Satellite Beach. 4 years later, Alexander Good platted an 80-acre subdivision west of O'Galley by the Sea. He was a resident of Tillman, now part of Palm Bay, who made his living building boats and serving as captain on yachts. In this picture, he and his companions are standing with a bear killed on the island. Good's descendants are still prominent in Melbourne civic affairs. The next month, a dentist in Miami and a partner in California platted Gulfstream Beach. A few months later, the Ogallie Shores Company platted the Ogallie Shores subdivision west of Gulfstream Beach. William J. Creel, Ogallie's first doctor, was president of that company. These plats are still used in legal descriptions of land in the city today. Most of the street names are still familiar to area residents.
Well, then when did they build their first homes then, Grandma?
Well, Rachel, I'm getting there.
Like many land dealings in Florida at that time, not much was done to turn the paper plat maps into real subdivisions. The only visible evidence of any of the early paper subdivisions were bulldozer paths through the scrub following the street layout of Ogallie Shores. Before the land speculation was over, land on the beaches was selling for as much as $2,300 per acre. That all came to an end after a 1926 hurricane devastated Miami and drove away land speculators. The country's economic condition then deteriorated until the crash of 1929. By 1933, the state owned more than 87% of the land in Brevard County because landowners had not paid their taxes. In 1935, the state held tax certificates on almost all of the land on this portion of the barrier island. The Florida Beaches Corporation was one of the survivors of the Depression. A principal in the company, if not the sole proprietor, was Vernon C. Fry, one of 12 men, including Henry Ford, who founded the Ford Motor Company. The corporation had assembled several hundred acres of land on the barrier island in 1925. In 1947, the corporation sold the land to Martin and Leslie Lepp of Detroit, Michigan. 2 months later, the Lepp sold a 1-acre lot on the ocean to Louis G. Olson, an attorney living in Ogallie, and his wife Ethel. In 1951, the Lepps, now residents of Florida, registered a plat for the Michigan Beach subdivision, named in honor of their former home.
So that's how it became Michigan Beach.
Oh, that's right, Rachel.
Now let's meet some of the early settlers. The first person to build a permanent residence in the area north of the Ogallie Causeway and south of Patrick Air Force Base was a widow named Stephanie Snaith. Mrs. Snaith built her home in 1951 and over the next few years added several small rental cottages. She also rented spaces on her property where people could park camper trailers. Carlos Canova had a fishing pier in Canova Beach at the end of the Ogallie Causeway. And the Mathers family was operating its toll bridge over the Banana River on the west side of the island. Within a year, Louis Olson, who had partnered with the Lepps in land transactions, built a small home on Cinnamon Drive near State Road A1A. His wife died about this time, and he rented the house to a Mr. Castora, a draftsman working in Ogallie. The location of the house was so remote and lacking in utilities, even electric power, that Mr. Castora lit bonfires to guide visitors to his home when he was entertaining. Another employee working with Mr. Castora learned from him that lots were available on the beach. That individual was Tom McLean. He and his brother Harry built Harry's family a home on one of those lots. Scotty, we're now at the point where some of those who were involved in the growth of this city can provide us with first-hand memories of what occurred. These memories are not completely accurate in some small details, but a few scrambled details do not detract from this story at all.
Grandma, did you ever know the McLeans?
I surely did, Emily. They were among the first families to settle in Satellite Beach.
There wasn't but 4 or 5 families here at all when we come here.
Well, I will say we are the children of Harry McLean Jr., and we are the first children to live north of the Ogallie Causeway in this area of the beach.
We moved to Florida from Pennsylvania in 1952. My father initially with Zena and Ruth Ann followed my uncle Tom McLean down here, who followed his girlfriend down here because her parents moved to Miami. We initially lived in the Atlantic, and then while we were living there, my father built the house. I bought some land from Mr. Olson and built the house on Cinnamon Drive. And Mr. Olson lived on Cinnamon Drive, across the street and up 2 or 3 lots from where we built. He also had 2 coconut lots on either side of the street with coconut trees. Eventually, Tom built the house next door. They built a house for our grandparents across the street, and that's how it all started. They were forming this first EE company, and I don't know that that was space affiliated at that time. So that's why he came here, because of the job. And then Daddy just followed him, and it had nothing to do with the space program. Actually, the space program when we came here was not really going on that much.
I moved here as I got out of service. I was with the Army out of Redstone Arsenal, Huntsville, Alabama. Came down here when we were firing Redstone missiles. Was going to stay with the group. This was the Von Braun team in Huntsville. And our work was going to be here in Florida. That meant finding a place to live here. I can no longer live in the barracks. I looked around Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach. That was too honky-tonky for me, so I got south of the base here and found some area down here, and I don't know what pulled me into Cinnamon Drive. It was just a little old marl street, and I met a guy standing out in front of the house down there, and his name was Louis. This was Louis Olson. So I've got a lot right here that I think would make a nice place for a house. How much do you want to spend on a house? I said, I only got about $10,000. He said, good. We'll build you a house for $10,000 on a handshake. Came down, the house was ready to walk into. Talking to somebody else, I believe, why he moved up here. He said he came up here, looked at the beach and saw all those rocks out there. He said, nobody will ever want to live along a beach like this. And he bought this whole area. He wanted privacy, away from that Miami stuff. That's the story I get from Louis. Now, whether it's all true or not, I don't know. You know, involved in lives, and he did a lot of good things, and he certainly got our family off to a good start with the support he gave our family. Tom McLean was next door to me. Louis was up on the end of the street. Reg Leonard had a house back where it was on another dirt road.
Took a job with Boeing on the Beaumark program, and where I was working was right at the south end of Patrick Air Force Base. I managed to run into this fella from Michigan, him and his wife. They had all these lots, and I could have bought that whole block there for $250 a piece, but I didn't have the money, unfortunately. Had some of my buddies, mostly electronic technicians. We built a house there on 400 Wilson Avenue. It's still sitting there.
We came with 2 little girls, and we lived in a trailer park down where the Purple Porpoise is and where Patsy Shell Shop was there, and the pier was there. While we were there, we decided to build a cabana and park our trailer on a lot and build a cabana and stay there. Apparently, somebody near where our lot was knew that we had bought the lot, and he came and visited us at the trailer park, and he said he would build us a house instead of the cabana on our lot, and that was Gaines Akoff. While we were working on the house, Percy saw the house in progress. He came to see it, and he bragged about he had just bought property all the way from the ocean to the river. And so we were quite interested in meeting our new neighbor.
Our mother and father, they were tobacco farmers. We thought as you grow up, you'd be a tobacco farmer also. 16 years old, they could quit school and go to Reynolds Tobacco Company and work and make money because they was tired of the farm. But farming was hard work. Percy and Shine run a country store, and they handled everything. And so this guy come by, and his rent house had burnt down. Percy was such a good figurehead The guy said, they're wanting to charge me $3,000. First said, let me see your plans. And he says, me and my two brothers will build it for you for $1,900. And right then is when we got started building. 1951, we had one house, big house in Winston-Salem that we could not get the roof on or anything because it snowed, it sleeted, and everything, and everybody says, why don't you go to Florida? And Jimmy Caudle, here's where Jimmy Caudle, our first cousin, comes in the picture. He was a big race fan, and he says, let's try that deal of going to Florida and go in February when the races is at Daytona. And this is when they had the races on the beach, you know. So we spent 3 nights at Daytona watching races, and come to Miami and bought 4 lots, backed up to each other in Miami. And we went back home and everything and finished that house that we had trouble in. And in July, we took off to Miami, us 3 brothers. And so after 2 years, I came back to North Carolina, and they stayed and built. And in '56, they wanted a piece of land that they could build on.
We made several trips up here, and we was informed down in Miami where we were building, a brother and first cousin and I, that we should be up here in Cape Canaveral. We had never heard of Cape Canaveral. That was in 1955. And happened that we was having a Pepsi-Cola break, and our plumber was there, and he told us about the land that he owned at that time up here. And him and I flew up here the following day, and it was exactly where we wanted, and I bought it on the plane going back. So I guess we might say that a Pepsi-Cola was the cause of Satellite Beach being born.
I drove races for 32 years. And Jimmy Caudle, one of the other builders, he said, bring the cars down from North Carolina and run O'Galley and Miami and places down here. And then my brother wanted to come, and I didn't want to, because I was driving race cars. And NASCAR didn't have many races in Florida. So my brother asked me to come down and help him build his house. Then I could go back and drive race cars. Then I come down and stayed building his house. I liked it. So I've been here ever since.
Dumont, he laid blocks for us there for a few houses, and they bought some land, and they become builders. Dumont and Jack and Percy. Well, Percy was the ringleader of them and all.
The Hitchcocks and Jimmy Caudle had all the lots. Then eventually we bought a tract of land and we developed our own lots, me and my brother Percy. Hamlin and Sherwood, those 2 streets all the way through. I sold my lots to Joe DePrima so I could drive race cars. Another set brothers that came down, Ray and Slim Sales, that came down, and they done a lot of block laying for us and all, and they started building it. See, when we built Satellite Beach, everybody worked on the houses, whether it's your house or my house or Percy's house, whose it was. We work on it, and when we sell them, whoever that house belonged to got the profit off of it. Nobody paid nobody. It was all traded labor around the building. We didn't form no corporation or anything. We were just done everything by handshake. We were fortunate to, everybody we dealt with, they said you couldn't work like this and all. And I said, and all of us said, why not? And all of us said, we're all good people, and they take our word for it, and we'll take their word for it.
Percy was one of the finest persons I ever knew. He always kept his word.
He was a unique individual, had relatively little education. But if he had a degree in anything, it was a degree of honesty.
It was a family affair, completely. Everybody built here was one family.
You know, we didn't have garbage service, so the garbage went out in the palmettos, so we had watermelon vines, and we had tomatoes that all came from the seeds from the garbage that we had thrown out. We had a real watermelon patch at one time.
It was grown up so bad, you could have a house back in there, you couldn't find it, because there were no roads to get to it. You just had to have a pig path down through the field to get to it. There wasn't no streets or no road. But see, there wasn't even a street cut nowhere when Percy Hitchcock and them come here. Well, Cinnamon Drive was cut down 2 blocks.
Well, until they, developed that area on there where the school is, it was a pretty wild country out there. And we had rattlesnakes all over the place. I mean, I had rattlesnake skins hanging all over the back wall of the house.
Had a lot of rattlesnakes too.
And rattlesnakes everywhere you looked. I never seen so many.
A1A was a horrible road. Yes, it was paved, but oh, it was ruddy and terrible. It was 2 lane.
But back then, you could go up on A1A, and I usually pulled the little red wagon, and it was a red wagon, up the street, and you could just slowly look back this way and south that way, and probably never see a car except maybe construction trucks. And boy, you dive under in the nice white sand. Who ever heard of a shark? No, porpoise maybe. And mullets jumping, oh my word, and porpoise, but never heard of shark, never.